It's fun. Does somebody go hee-haw? Yeah. Yeah. Chris, that's amazing. You have a little cough that you hide in there that you go, it still stays on, and let me sing again. That's pretty amazing. That's pretty amazing. Very fun. Before I start my talk, I want to welcome James back. Stand up, James. Thank you. Yeah. Did you have a good time? Amazing time. So we'll get to hear about it, I'm sure, from when Youth speaks again. He took 4 teens, girls, all the way down to Southern California for camp last week. And 650 miles. High energy, yeah. And Michael, thank you. Michael flew down and helped to drive the girls and James back. And what a community this is, where we reach out and support each other in these events. So welcome home, and thank you for taking the time out of your life. Good deal. So, yes, I have a talk to do. I was going to say, it's not the offertory. It's all the music and the joy. So I have some interesting ideas to share with you, the topic being honoring our differences. And I had an email from a friend saying, I'm really looking forward to you talking about diversity. And I'm going, I wasn't going to do that. So if you're here thinking we all know about diversity. We all know our feelings when we bump into diversity, right? Right? So I want you to deal with those feelings and to look at this idea, this opportunity to see from a place of light, see from a place of your divine true self, to change some of the ways that you have perceived even the most innocent of experiences as you live out in this very entertaining world right now. So I'm going to start with a story from Stephen Levine and reminding you that, the talks this month, we are speaking of communication, and CSL's one of the principles that we align with, and you can see how you align with this. We embrace the understanding that God's Spirit, or life, has taken on unique and individualized form in and as each of us. We celebrated Spirit as we honor the different individualized expressions of each of us. So we each have a different take on what it's like to be a human, and where we tend to allow our heart to flourish. We also have a tendency in our ways to shut down our heart. And those are the places that I invite us to very carefully tread lightly into and look at your deep self. And look at the self that you have created around some of those ideas. And Stephen Levine starts off this story. This is a story about different people who speak about for the love of God. And it's a handbook for the Spirit put together by Benjamin Shield and Richard Carlson. But this particular story of Stephen Levine has always been one of my favorite teachers to read. His way of expressing himself always reaches me in a very deep way, where his words stay with me. And he starts off his expression about leaning towards the light, and the song, we talk about leaning in to one another, and that's what we're doing at the very first song, is leaning into the light. And he starts with this quote: "It may be said that God cannot be known in the mind, but only experienced in the heart." So he begins this story of how he found God from being a very young man. I think he was 12 or 13, and he was at a camp that was run by a Christian Scientist. But at home, and he had left the camp, and while he was at the camp, his parents had called him and scolded him for what they believed the neighbor said he stole something. And so it crushed his heart that he was being accused of something while he was away at this camp and talking about love and all of the wonderful things about being a young man. So his first experience was being embraced by this wise counselor who said, The camp director overheard the conversation, noticed the fear and distress I was experiencing, and put his arms around me and says, everything will be all right. Just take a breath or two. Everything will be all right. And as he did this, so here he is, just 12 or 13, he sees he's holding his leader there, and he sees a sign on the wall that says, God is love. And so these moments, we each have them. They can be so quickened, but they move through us. They are signs to let us know, yes, it really will be all right. So this is the story I wanted to share, though. So that was his beginning, God is love. Some years ago, while I was involved in an arduous Buddhist meditation practice, the door opened to the room in my mind in which I was sitting, and in walked the luminous figure of Jesus. So here he is in deep meditation, and very ardent, as he said, Buddhist. And in walks Jesus. I was dismayed. And he says to his own self, you must have the wrong guy, I'm Buddhist. Maybe you're looking for the fellow down the hall. He smiled with the smile of the heart that knows no separation. His presence suffused the room with the infinite mercy of the shared heart. I love these words, the shared heart. He motioned to be still and to listen. My mind, though, full of rigid knowing, burst to expose the sacred heart beating in my chest. I was ecstatic for days. That's what we want for one another. We want to burst through those rigid areas in our being that we are so innocent. We're so innocent of those as they applied themselves, as we were molded and shaped by society's ways on what's the right kind of figure to have, what's the right kind of skin color to have. Some of these, what kind of gender are you going to be? What kind of sexuality are you going to be? And they're shaped and framed and influenced and judged in such, sometimes a very loud way and sometimes in a very quiet way, sometimes in a very shaming way. And so we learn tools and skills to quiet it down to, well, I just won't go there. I just won't go there. I'll just kind of keep to my own self. And so we develop a persona around that. In his direct experience, he goes on to say, in that moment that he shared, the deathless, that which precedes birth and extends beyond death, asked afterwards what that experience was all about. I could only say it was about the experience of God, of our nature, of the underlying reality, the ocean of being on which floats the tiny waves of thought and personality. Such a beautiful testimony of why I'm a minister. I sometimes question, how did I get here? Not because I know more than any of you, but it's an opportunity to walk in the journey and to give a voice to the ideas of this journey, where the invitation to really hone our skills on the spiritual path is called forth. In a TED Talk by Jonathan Haidt, H-A-I-D-T, I'm not saying it right, it sounds like I'm saying he's hate, but he did. And he speaks of this, I spoke a little bit about the 9 o'clock service, the evolution of the brain, where so many of these areas where we tend to react and have our perceptual field from, comes from the fear base, from the reptilian part of our brain. We're innocent of that. It is that which shapes us and causes us to move away from fear and to move towards things that we love, the reptilian brain. And there's higher centers of the brain, and this is what's evolving. And this is what they're able now to capture. It's so exciting in the MRIs and in all the research. There's this space, and especially in the more frontal lobes of your brain, where the spirituality unfolds and the divisions dissolve. They completely disappear. And so many testimonies are written of these people that, and you can find this way, this journey up this, Jonathan described it as this beautiful, he has these visuals of a stairwell that goes straight up, dark on all sides, but the most brilliant, beautiful light. That when you close your eyes in meditation, when people speak of, did you see the light? You know, I'm thinking, no. And I'm always looking for the light. And sometimes I am in the light so immersed that I think, oh, turn off the light, because I'm trying to meditate here. And I'm thinking, oh, there is no light. Wow, I'm there. Oh, it's gone. And it's so quick. And it's such a state that we all have that potentiality to dwell in that realm. And that's what we're evolving to through spiritual practice, through sacred dance, through the whirling dervish, through many ways where community comes together, in fact, and bonds on one idea, bringing everything from a place of I to we, from I to we. And so he even referenced that even in armed services, when people are at war, the men come together, they become we. The bond is we. And so these opportunities for us to explore, well, what's my way? And that's one of the things we'll be discussing and sharing at Retreat together in August, is our personal path on the journey. And you get to really explore like, oh my gosh, I've been on my journey the whole time. I thought it had to look like the Buddhist way or the yogi way. I thought I had to do 108 salutations with my forehead hitting the ground every day before I'd be enlightened. Mm-mm. The invitation is for you to find a way where your heart softens, your heart opens, and your mind quiets, and they blend as one, and you're in harmony. So each one of us has an opportunity, and each one of us has had these moments. As a child where that divine spark awakened us, we've had that. I know we have. That's why we're here. We're continually looking, longing, almost homesick for that feeling once again, to be charged into our way of knowing that we can live more gently in our way. And it all begins with the self, learning about the self. You're each one an individualized expression and a variation in this wonderful universe. None of us are alike. We can journey with our partners, but we're not alike. We are rooted in the one, and that one we can name as love, as God, as spirit, whatever large, spacious word you can name for yourself, that field that embraces you and welcomes you and holds you. Now, there was an expression by some rabbis talking it that it's like a mirror. And it says, God is like a mirror. The mirror never changes, but everyone who looks at it sees a different face. And I was amused by that because in cardiac rehab, I create jokes. I mean, I don't create them. I'm not that funny. I cut them out from the internet, cartoons. And one of the cartoons that I particularly found was quite humorous to me was, because it was all about money this week, was the beggar sitting against the building with his begging bowl, and the man leaning down to put the money in the bowl, and the beggar was holding up a mirror. So when the man leaned down, all he saw was his own face. And I thought, wow, why is that funny? That's not really funny, but that's really, wow, who are we giving to? You know, his own self was reflected in that mirror. And I thought, I wonder if anybody's out there doing that, because that's wow. You know, who are we giving to? You see yourself in all things. So the mirror never changes, but everyone who looks into it sees a different face. There was another author in here, Hugh Prather, who I've enjoyed since I was really young. He also had a healing practitioner that was a Christian Scientist, and his respect for her was so endearing because he was just a young boy, and he describes her as just being so, her name, Mrs. Fulton. You know, isn't that colorful? Mrs. Fulton. That's how he begins his story. They were all so loyal to her. No one knew of her, would think of using her first name. They had no memory of ever even hearing it. And because she was so ordinary, so humble, so honest, she was such a devoted individual of truth. She only had one eye that would open. She was crippled with arthritis to the point of being unable to walk, and she was completely free in her mental ability to always turn to God. Now, people would judge her. Hey, heal yourself, woman. I've had that. Why are your feet crippled? Heal yourself. You know, what is that? When we point that way to somebody, she didn't listen to any of that. She stayed true to that deep self. She never gave on the air or the appearance of being the most successful practitioner in that work. But this was her prayer of heart. This is her truth. This is how she turned to God. I am one with thee. O thou infinite one, I am where thou art. I am what thou art. I am because thou art. So incredibly beautiful, that simple prayer of deep connection. And then in the Science of Mind teaching, that is the invitation. Name what God is for you, and then make union with that in your dialogue, in your prayer of heart. And that's a simple prayer. God is, and I am, so hum. God is, and I am, so hum. So be it. So it is. So you want to see in your own world this idea of your life as God would see it. See it with God's eyes, with God's heart. Carry that into your vision throughout the day. Start in the mornings with that simple prayer of your heart. What is going to turn you to that divine place? Thich Nhat Hanh reminds us in his writing, stop thinking so much, just be. Stop thinking so much, just be. Just be with what is. What a privilege that is. Ernest Holmes says unity and uniformity are not the same thing. No two blades of grass are alike. What does it mean, spirituality? It means that incarnated within each of us is not only a divine spark, that divine light, that stairwell of truth, not only an incarnation of the living spirit of the cosmos, but a unique presentation of the cosmic whole. He speaks of that in his Beverly Hills lectures. So can you do that? Can you express your uniqueness and your individual self? Can you value yourself that much that when we start talking about diversity and differences, can you turn to the self inside of you and be gentle? Have mercy on that self within you, that kindness. That. Thank you, Michael. You read that writing of the Dalai Lama so beautifully, because Dalai Lama has the truth before us. We don't have to be a Buddhist to understand what he is guiding us towards. So you're an individualized center of consciousness. Individualized center of consciousness. Individualized. So many of the writings speak to being the wave in the ocean, but never the wave itself all alone. You're always connected to source. This wave, the ocean. Ernest Holmes speaks to it. Paramahansa Yogananda speaks to it. So visualize yourself never separate from the ocean. You are the individualized form. You are the action in which God is flowing in and through. So make space inside of yourself. And how do you make space? You let down the boundaries. You let down the walls that you unintentionally built up around your heart. Those constricted places where suddenly you found yourself in judgment. So oftentimes we have stereotypes, and they're so subtle. They can be so quick across, and then you realize, oh, I don't like that person because. And why? You haven't given them a chance. It is our opportunity in this time, with all that's going on emotionally, politically, worldwide, in humanity itself, whether it's the environment you choose to focus on, what is where are your emotions being invested in and called upon now? Please don't turn away or become complacent with it. The call is stirring you up so that you become the one that's going to be making the difference in the world. And it begins with you, not with all of it out there. So what an opportunity to be the one acting on behalf of God in that expression of who you are, letting that divine essence flow through you to others. So again, look inside yourself. How have I imprisoned this potentiality of spirit? How can I break down my stereotypes? my assumptions about people, about groups, just about individual differences. How can I understand humanity? There is a minister named Dr. Charles Bridges. He says we tend to just group things. It's the way the mind works when we stay in that area of the mind. But when we take ourselves into the area of the brain where we lift ourselves and we take that stairway into the light, that's where the sacred is. And that's where, without even knowing it, you practice forgiveness. You're set free when you walk into that realm of divinity. His invitation is for us to understand the value in every person. And then he quotes that from the Psalms. The wisdom in these ancient texts are alive in us today. Every person has a purpose in God's work. Every person has a personality of God's design. Every person has the potential to serve the one. So we have this variety of humanity, and we also have within us the grace, the spark, the ability to minister, to serve. So ask yourself, where is it blocked? Where am I showing prejudice, preference, pride? Ask for that to be changed in you, not out there. Change within yourself. There is this idea, a quote from Maxine Pree that says, give each other the space to grow and be ourselves in that same space, exercising that change, to be able to dwell in diversity with a sense of calm, with a sense of embrace, with no division. It's okay to see differences, but to judge the difference and to wall off and say, I'm not going to like them because. To try to shift that is such, I think, one more thought of the heart, and it's like the 100th monkey. We're there. What a beautiful opportunity. She also says, we need space so that we can both give and receive ideas of openness, dignity, joy, healing, and inclusion. You don't have true freedom until you allow a diversity of opinion and a diversity of voids. So it can all get kind of messy, but we're asking ourselves to honor our differences, and cherish our similarities. So we get to speak with love, live with love, be love. We were taught at a young age this concept of material wealth and racial status and social class. When I went to India, and a lot of people would ask me about what was it like with the class system in India, and I'd say, very striking, very obvious, but we have it here, don't we? We have it, we call it by different names, and I don't mean to be mean here, but we call it by Walmart shoppers, and we call it by different ways of naming it. The other. We have it here. And I can feel it in my profession as a nurse. I've got a judge before me, and I'm watching every word. A lawyer, I'm watching every word. And then I'm different, though. I'm more relaxed with another class or profession. It happens it just kind of flows in and out. And so we have to be the gatekeeper of the heart to realize, am I walling off or am I being open? Is grace flowing through me? So we have been chained. Think about that, where you have been chained to some of your misperceptions, chained to some of your judgments. Kind of makes, even as I speak it feels heavy, and I can feel the light in the room going, lay off us, But it's just an invitation to please explore your own heart, to see, how can I give more? How can I stay open? And how can I relieve the suffering that I see out there? So I want to set free and to increase your peace and your understanding and your connection for greater relationships. It begins by expecting the best of yourself. You say that prayer in the morning, may grace fill me. God is, I am, so hum, may I be in this world a servant to the one. And when we have unskillful ways that show up along the day, may we at night take it in and not criticize even our own self or judge our own self, but say, whoa, I got some work to do here. Forgive yourself. Forgive, forgive, forgive yourself. And start to see the ways of love blossoming and yielding a path that takes you up the stairwell into that light, into that evolutionary aspect of who we are meant to be. So we're monitoring our choices, both all of the positive and the negative thoughts, all our actions. We're allowing ourselves no longer to be complacent with what is when we see there needs to be a powerful change here. There needs to be a powerful shift here. Not my way, though I like it my way, not my way all the time, but let me see alternative ways. Let me see a truth that I have not yet been awakened to. Let me raise the consciousness within the dialogue with another. When I feel like I'm closing myself off, let me stay reverent to the divine and allow the divine to whisper to me, to show up in those moments, just as Jesus did for Stephen Levine in those moments, with that sweet smile, with that unconditional love. Let me be awake to that level of consciousness. Let me know that as I dance or meditate or walk in nature, that I'm working on that opportunity to move from the personal my world to the world of all, to feel that blessing of universality. And the work of nonviolent communication is a beautiful way. We're going to have a class for this in the next year to help us learn. I'm so used to the way I am, I don't know how to be any other way. And the idea is to offer chords of your heart, to reach out to another and to be able to express authenticity and to find a way, can I really hear you? Do I really see you? Am I really listening to you? Or am I so blocked by my own preconditioned mind? How can I be? And they call it the matrix, building this ground of interaction, of truth. And you never want to approach it from a place of anger. If you're feeling anger, go out and take a breath. Go out and take a breath, give your heart a talking to, give your mind a talking to, and say, I'm going back in. I'm going to speak from a place of love. You want to tend to the whole thing that's going on, not just a piece of your mind interjected in there. Go ahead and explore the differences. Go ahead. Feel free to do that. But allow that reptilian part of your brain to quiet down so that you can allow yourself the opportunity for compassion to rise up and for this sense of kindness, as the Dalai Lama spoke of, to allow that part of you to be welcomed into the conversation. So anytime, as I close, remember this conflict that you might feel, that you might recognize, it's a part of all of us. We move in and out of conflict. Some things we haven't explored yet in ourselves, we're too afraid to. But it's showing us the places that we are afraid. Definitely right now. Definitely at this time on our planet, we're being invited to explore the places where we're afraid, what needs attention. And ask yourself, what if I was not afraid to disagree? I hate conflict myself. I'll bury my head. I have a really good way of clamping my jaw down and getting really quiet and withdrawn, introverted. Some call it moody. I call it introverted. But I don't like conflict. I want to express myself, but I can feel the tension rise inside of me when my heart beats. But I want to expose that. I want to heal that. It's like a cancer inside us that keeps growing if we just let it do its own thing. So let yourself feel safe enough to know another, and that if you approach it with mutual caring, you will allow that opportunity for them to mirror that back. For once you really see the truth into someone and you allow that love to flow, you cannot help but love them on that grander level. Not love them like take them home for dinner and everything, but love them in a way, that agape kind of love, that is more embracing, Allowing yourself to see each other, to know each other, is the essential part of connection, healing, and creating peace. The writer of this particular article for nonviolent communication says, the first step of humanizing someone is to learn something about them personally. The more you know their story, the more you know each other's story, the more connected you feel. So begin to see and celebrate others and allow yourself to be set free. I can breathe with that. Can you? Set yourself free. And it's all about moving into that beautiful realm of absolute love. So when I close this talk, I'll have you, he wants to come to the piano. And hold this space big enough. Think about, this sanctuary. Sanctuaries sometimes in cathedrals are so large to hold that space, of absolute love, and recognize you're a part of that. You've invited yourself into this space. And this space is big enough to allow you to be yourself, and we welcome you, no matter how different you are. We want you to seek also, though, an opportunity when you share in the social hall, break down the tables where you usually sit and find a new companion to share the thoughts of what we talk about in our message each week. Find a way to go home and throughout the week, don't go down the same track of, I hate this, I hate that, and why did they? Find another language in your own self. Be honest. Raise above arguments and criticisms. Reveal yourself, inquire, celebrate differences, share, accept, allow, enjoy this world. So we can choose to stay living in the profane, living in that ordinary world where everything has its place, it's all set, I know my way. Or, which isn't a bad place to be when you create your life around you. No, it's not a bad place to be. But the evolved place, the sacred, the light, the way every mystic is taking our hand and saying, we're right up here, we're right here. Take one more step, and we will unite ourselves with you in the sacred. Let's go there in that field. So join with me in a prayer that takes us into that field of the absolute. Feel yourself there. If you recognize any contracted space within your being now, let it go, surrender. Surrender in this place that is safe, that allows you the courage to be free, to be in that field of love and grace, to expand yourself and your knowing into that field of grace. And we honor our differences, and we bless our similarities, and we walk hand in hand, heart to heart, minds free. A place of no judgment, no criticism, no right and wrong. That field, that universal field. We were born into that field. We make our transition into that field, always with us, always surrounded, always immersed. I give thanks as I celebrate all the differences. I celebrate my quickened mind as I wake up to more and more opportunities to speak my truth, to walk in peace, to make a difference in my world. I give thanks for my ways that make the air cleaner, the water fresher. I tidy up my world. And I allow each and every one of us to share in that opportunity to tidy up and to allow ourselves to open and expand so that we can invite more into that wonderful space of grace. I give thanks for your attention today, for the ways your minds have wandered into your story, to the story of another. But most importantly, I give thanks for the ways that you're allowing yourself the possibility to shift, to love more deeply. That's what we're here for. Lean on each other as we find our way together. We make a difference in this world. I release my word knowing that we are ambassadors of this truth. We move from these walls out into our community, into our families, into our work, and we speak truth. We keep our hearts open, and we watch the world change. Thank you, God, for powerful teaching, for powerful hearts and minds willing to yield, willing to wake up. I release my word knowing that we are joined together in truth, in love, in kindness. So be it. And together we say, and so it is. Thank you for listening.